Welcome back to the deep dive. You know the conventional wisdom, right? The house always wins.
Always.
When you look at a roulette wheel, the whole thing is designed to be just pure random chaos. The math is supposed to just grind your bankroll down to nothing. And look, for most people, that is the cold, hard truth.
It is. It's the law of large numbers, and that's supposed to be the starting point and the end point.
Mm-hmm.
But the research we're diving into today,
Mm-hmm.
it makes this really extraordinary claim.
Okay.
It's about a piece of software called WheelPulse Pro Max 2026, and it claims it can exploit these tiny statistical anomalies so precisely that they can get what they call a zero-loss session.
A zero-loss session.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds less like math and more like, I don't know, breaking the laws of physics.
Right.
So our mission today isn't to, endorse this. It's to really unpack the logic. How does this software supposedly find these fracture points and all that chaos? Is that just marketing, or is there some kind of a deep statistical modeling going on that sees patterns we can't?
That is the core question.
Mm.
And before we get to the solution, we have to talk about the problem. And the problem fundamentally is the human brain.
Ouch. So we're the weak link. Why, though? I mean, we get probability, don't we?
We get it in the abstract, yeah, but not in real time. The source material is pretty blunt about this.
Yeah.
Humans, we bet on statistical noise.
What do you mean by noise?
You see 3 reds in a row. Your brain just screams, black is due, I got to double down. That's the gambler's fallacy. The wheel has no memory.
Right. The last spin means nothing for the next one.
Exactly. And, maybe more importantly, the human brain just can't crunch the data. I mean, imagine trying to track 100 spins of data across dozens, columns, even money bets all at once.
And you're also trying to manage your bankroll, your strategy.
Yes. And then the zero pops up. You can't do it.
It's complete cognitive overload. And then you throw in the human stuff, the exhaustion, the greed when you're winning, the panic when you're losing.
Precisely. Suddenly the house's edge isn't just the green slot, it's us. And that's where the software is supposed to come in. It doesn't panic, it doesn't get greedy.
It just computes.
It just computes. And it uses that power to find these fracture points. And this is where the term matters. A fracture point isn't a guaranteed win. It's a moment where the math has gotten so skewed that a correction is overwhelmingly probable.
Mm.
They say it's a point where it's almost irresponsible not to bet.
That's a huge claim. They're basically saying they've made a probabilistic game predictable. And this isn't about, ball physics. It's just pure data.
Pure pattern matching.
So we're looking at the Pro Max 2026 version. What was the basic WheelPulse Pro built on?
The original was basically the data collector. It does all the heavy lifting, the raw tracking that, you and I just couldn't sustain.
So what's it showing the user? What are the key things?
It's tracking all the big groups, even money, columns, dozens. It shows you the history.
Yeah.
And crucially, it visualizes hot and cold sections, what they call strong numbers.
So numbers that are hitting a lot recently.
Exactly. And it's got a dealer spin tracker, a spin trend radar.
Yeah.
Think of the basic software as just giving you total visibility. It tells you what is happening.
Okay, so it gives you perfect knowledge of the past, but the strategy is still up to you. The Pro Max upgrade, then, that's the brain. It's the algorithm that makes the call.
Absolutely. And this is where the scale of their research is it's mind-boggling. To even try to make a zero-loss claim, they said they had to move way beyond the gambling point.
How do you do that?
By stress testing. For each strategy, for each trigger, they analyzed, get this, 5 million spins.
5 million per strategy. That is a gigantic data set. What do you even learn from that much data?
You learn the absolute edges,
Yeah.
the extreme cases. You're not looking for averages anymore. You're trying to find, with near certainty, the longest possible losing streak for any given pattern. That's how they set their safest point to enter a bet.
Okay, give me an example. How does that translate into, a betting signal?
Okay, so let's say they're looking at a dozens strategy. Over 5 million spins. They find the absolute longest that one dozen ever went without hitting was, say, 15 spins.
Okay.
So the system's default safe entry point might be set to phase 7. That means the software won't even think about placing a bet until the current drought has already gone on for a long, long time and hit that super conservative phase 7.
So it's waiting for the wheel to build up a huge statistical debt, a debt that mathematically has to be paid back.
That's the idea. And you can even make it safer. You can slide it from phase 7 to, say, phase 12. At that point, you're waiting for a drought that might have happened only once in those 5 million spins. You're stacking the probability so heavily in your favor.
Okay, this is where we need to get into the mechanics, the engine room. The system has 4 different algorithms, right? 4 keys it's using at the same time.
Correct. And they're all running simultaneously. Each one is like a different kind of sniper looking for a different kind of statistical anomaly.
All right, let's break them down. First one is the sniper. What's it looking for?
The sniper is a pattern matcher. It scans thousands of past spins looking for an exact sequence that's happening right now, like a statistical fingerprint.
So if the pattern red, black, red, 0 happened, and 99% of the time in the past it was followed by black.
The sniper fires. It triggers a bet. It's pure historical duplication.
Okay, so it's looking for a kind of statistical deja vu. How is that different from the second one, the drought?
The grout is looking for the opposite. It's looking for absence. It waits for a whole section of the wheel, a column, to go into what they call statistical coma.
A deep freeze.
A deep freeze, exactly. Imagine a dozen that should hit, on average, every 3 spins, but it hasn't hit in 12. The system sees that as a massive debt that the wheel has to correct soon.
That makes sense. Everything has to even out over time. So then what's the anomaly?
The anomaly is kind of the inverse of the sniper. It's watching for streaks that are so statistically absurd that they can't possibly continue. It bets against them.
Like what?
Like if the 4 hottest strong numbers hit back to back to back to back, the odds of that are astronomical. The anomaly triggers, betting that the universe is about to correct itself, that the streak of absurdity is over.
So you've got historical patterns, statistical absence, and statistical excess, all being watched at once. But what if they conflict? What if the drought says bet on the first dozen, but the anomaly says bet on red?
And that's the key to the Pro Max logic. It doesn't bet. It stays silent. The system is looking for convergence, or at least a really high confidence score from one of the engines without a major conflict from another. It's a 4-dimensional filter.
Which brings us to the last and maybe most important engine, the zero guard. Because the zero kills almost every other system out there.
It really does, and this is the biggest philosophical shift they make. Most systems, like a martingale, they just get destroyed by the zero. It's a total loss. The zero guard is designed to use the zero as an accelerator, not an endgame.
We have got to unpack the math on that. But first, let's talk about risk. Because if you're waiting for these extreme moments, you have to be so patient. The system has a slider for this, right? Tell me about the highest setting, titanium mode.
Titanium mode is, well, it's the peak certainty setting. When you switch it on, you're basically telling the AI, do not let me bet unless the math is like 99% in my favor, and I will wait as long as it takes.
99% certainty. I mean,
yeah.
come on, in a game of chance. That sounds impossible. Are they really saying they eliminate 99% of the risk?
What they're saying is that by waiting for the math to get that skewed to the extremes they found in those 5 million spins, the chance of the correction not happening in the next few spins drops to 1%.
Okay, so assuming that's the confidence level, what does titanium mode actually do to the engines we just talked about?
It just tightens all the rules. For the drought engine, it might move that required waiting period from phase 7 all the way up to phase 12. For the sniper, it changes the pattern matching from what they call a fuzzy match to an exact DNA match. So if every single little piece isn't perfectly aligned, the software just stays silent.
That completely changes how you play. You're not grinding out small wins, you're sniping.
That's the exact term they use. Sniping is all about extreme patience. The source material says a typical session in titanium mode might only have 5 or 6 bets over 20 minutes. Most of the time, you're just sitting there, watching.
That has to be so hard for the average person who goes to a casino for the action.
It's the ultimate discipline test. They actually have a quote about it. A normal player would have already lost 5 bets here chasing noise. WheelPulse keeps me on the sidelines. Not losing money is the first step to making money.
So bankroll preservation is everything in that mode.
It is the only thing until that moment of overwhelming certainty arrives.
Okay, but let's go back to the zero. I've waited forever for phase 12. I finally make my big high probability bet, and the zero hits. For a normal player, that's it. It's a disaster. How does the zero guard turn that loss into a win?
It instantly recalculates the statistical debt. So imagine the system was waiting for black to hit to correct a long drought. The ball lands on 0.
Yeah.
0 isn't black, but it also isn't red. So the drought for black hasn't actually been broken. It's just paused.
Ah, I see. If a red had hit, it would have been a loss, but it would have sort of reset the scales a bit. But the zero is outside that red-black system.
Precisely. The statistical pressure for that black to hit is now even greater than it was before that spin. The algorithm knows the zero didn't break the drought, it accelerated it. It made this statistical imbalance even worse. which means the correction is even more likely now.
So the zero actually intensifies the signal for the next bet. It doesn't reset it.
Exactly. And that's why you don't need to bet on the zero. You're using its mathematical impact to strengthen your next progression bet. Their whole philosophy on it is, we didn't fight the zero, we used it. That is the difference between gambling and investing.
That is a powerful idea. Do they ever suggest betting on more than one thing at a time if the signals line up?
They do. They talk about these jackpot scenarios where the triggers converge. So for example, say the drought shows a massive debt on the high numbers, and at the same time, the sniper find a perfect pattern match that says the third dozen has to hit.
Okay, so you have two really strong separate signals pointing to the same area of the board.
Right. And you can create a jackpot. You might bet, say, 3 units on high and 2 units on the third dozen. Those sections overlap a lot, from 25 to 36. So you're basically guaranteed a win if either one hits. But you get a massive payout if the ball lands in that overlap zone.
So to sum it up, WheelPulse Pro Max handles all the math, the history, the patterns, the zero logic, and the user just puts the chips down when the light turns green.
That's the claim. They argue that what we call randomness is just a level of complexity that our brains can't process. By finding these deep, validated patterns, the code just reveals the correction that was always going to happen. They claim they've turned the roulette wheel from chaos into a predictable asset class.
It's a wild claim, but one supported by a lot of video evidence of these zero-loss sessions, all based on just extreme patience and deep, deep data analysis.
Which brings us to the key takeaways for you. The first big point from this is that the system claims the real weakness in roulette isn't the math of the wheel, it's our own cognitive bias, our impatience and panic.
Second, systems like this move the whole idea of when to bet. You're not gambling anymore, you're waiting and waiting until a statistical correction isn't just likely, it's almost mathematically required.
And third, the risk management is all about discipline. The titanium mode sniping strategy, which requires incredible patience, and rethinking the zero, not as a game ender, but as an accelerator.
So that leaves us with a final thought. If a system can be engineered to prove that these anomalies exist and are exploitable in something we always just wrote off as random chaos,
Right.
what does that imply?
Well,
What other parts of our world that we think are just pure luck or too volatile to predict, from tiny fluctuations in the stock market to big global supply chains, might also have these hidden exploitable fracture points if we just had the power to see the patterns?
fascinating thought. Where else is chaos just complexity we haven't filtered yet? We'll be thinking about that one until our next deep dive.